All right, let's dive into what has to be one of the most surprising geopolitical shifts we've seen in a long, long time: India's pivot to the Taliban. I mean, this is a story packed with old enemies, brand new alliances, and just the cold, hard logic of what we call pragmatism.
I mean, to really get how wild this is, you just have to look at the contrast here. Picture this: August 2021. The Taliban storms back into power. What does India do? It shuts down its embassy, scrambles to evacuate its diplomats. It was pure chaos, a full-on retreat. Now, flash forward just 4 years, and what do we see? The Taliban's foreign minister, Amir Khan Muttaki, is literally getting a red carpet welcome in New Delhi. Talk about a complete 180.
So, the question is obvious, right? What on earth happened? How do you go from a total diplomatic shutdown to a formal state visit in just a few years? Well, that's exactly the puzzle we're going to piece together today. Okay, so first up, let's talk about this surprising welcome. And this visit, it was absolutely groundbreaking. You have to remember, this isn't just any diplomat. Muttaki is still on the United Nations sanctions list. Get this, he actually needed a special travel waiver from the UN just to be allowed to fly to India. I mean, that fact alone tells you everything you need to know about how big of a deal this was.
And hey, this wasn't just some photo op, not just a handshake for the cameras. Real things came out of this meeting. India's going to reopen its embassy in Kabul. They've both promised to keep in close communication. The Taliban is basically saying, hey, India, come invest in our mines. And they're even restarting direct flights. These are solid, tangible steps toward warming up a relationship that was, completely on ice just a little while ago. So what's really behind this massive shift? Let's be real, it's not like they suddenly had a change of heart or found some common ideology. Nope. This is a cold, calculated move. It's a textbook case of pure pragmatism. India has decided it's time to play the game of what's known as realpolitik.
And this quote from Praveen Dante of the International Crisis Group, man, it just hits the nail on the head. The thinking in New Delhi is pretty simple, actually. They've realized that the cost of not talking to the Taliban is just way too high. If they just ignore Afghanistan, they're essentially leaving a huge, strategically important vacuum right on their doorstep. A vacuum that their biggest rivals, Pakistan and China, would be more than happy to fill.
This timeline really shows you what a massive break from the past this is. Just think about it. Back in '96, India didn't just shut its embassy, it actively funded and supported the Northern Alliance, the guys fighting against the Taliban. For the next 20 years, the official line was that the Taliban was just a puppet of Pakistan. Even when they dipped a toe back in 2022, it was strictly for humanitarian aid. So this 2025 official visit? Yeah, this is a whole new ballgame.
So if you had to boil it all down to the single biggest reason for this change, what would it be? Well, it's not some new friendship blooming between Delhi and Kabul. It's actually about the complete and total collapse of the old alliance between the Taliban and its biggest backer for decades, Pakistan. And this quote from a former Indian ambassador to Afghanistan, Gautam Mukhopadhyay, just lays it all out there, plain and simple. He says because they both have problems with Pakistan, it kind of makes them natural allies. And that right there is page 1 of the classic geopolitics playbook. The enemy of my enemy, well, he's my friend.
You can really see this massive regional realignment in action here. On one hand, you have the Taliban and Pakistan. These guys used to be tight, practically inseparable. Now, their relationship is a mess. We're talking open clashes on the border and Pakistan constantly accusing the Taliban of hiding armed groups like the TTP. At the exact same time, the India-Taliban relationship has done a complete flip, from enemies to this weird, pragmatic engagement, all because they now share a common problem. Okay, so what's in it for them? If this is just a pragmatic, transactional deal, then what does each side actually get out of it? Let's break down the wins for both India and the Taliban. All right, for India, this is all about strategy. First, and this is a big one, it pushes back against Pakistani and Chinese influence right in its neighborhood. Second, they get a promise from the Taliban that Afghan land won't be used to launch attacks against India, a huge security win. And third, it opens up a pathway to trade and investment, especially in things like mining.
And for the Taliban, well, they get the one thing they crave more than anything else: legitimacy. I mean, think about it. Being welcomed by a regional giant like India, that's a massive diplomatic win. It helps them get access to trade, investment, aid, and it's a giant leap toward their ultimate goal, which is getting formally recognized by the rest of the world and having a real seat at the table. And, we can't forget about the money. We're talking about bilateral trade that hit almost $900 million last year. For an economy like Afghanistan's, which is pretty isolated and struggling, well, that's a very powerful reason to stay on good terms with New Delhi. But this purely pragmatic approach has its price. And for India, warming up to the Taliban has kicked up a whole lot of controversy and criticism at home.
A lot of people are asking some really tough, uncomfortable questions. Like, how can India, the world's largest democracy, give a red carpet welcome to a regime that's been systematically crushing the rights of women and minorities? There was a huge backlash, for example, when female journalists were told they couldn't attend an initial press conference. It really gets to the deep ethical problem at the core of this whole thing.
And that brings us to the counter-argument, the core belief of the real-world politics camp, which is summed up perfectly here by Ajay Sani. The logic goes like this. You can't just stick your head in the sand and pretend a regime doesn't exist just because you don't like its policies. You have to deal with the reality that's right in front of you. And for the Indian government, that reality, the rivalry with Pakistan and China, is just too important to ignore, even with all the ethical issues.
So that leaves us with a really big fundamental question. In this messy, complicated world we're in, where power is shifting all over the place, is it possible that for some countries, pragmatism is now more important than principles? India, for its part, has clearly made its choice. But what the long-term consequences of that choice will be, well, we're just going to have to wait and see.